We're not going to talk about this. We're not talking about this. We're not talking about it. We're not talking about it. Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to my channel. I think that today we're going to do something that I haven't done for a little while. Let's talk horror, guys. I was asked to contribute to a website called Deadhead Reviews for this month so that my voice is heard as a woman. And I really suggest that you check out everyone's contributions to the site. I will leave the link to the site in my description box down below. I contributed a piece about how horror isn't dead, it's very much alive. And I wanted to take a few points that I made during this article and sort of shift the focus a bit. So basically my article was about how modern horror has not killed the genre, it's just made it a little more aware. And I think one of the things that you get when you look at modern horror is that we have to look at how the female dynamic in these movies has changed. You know, I'm going to have a tail in front of my face for most of this video, am I? So that's what I want to talk about today, guys. So grab yourselves a bag of popcorn, make yourself a drink, you know, just put on your favorite fuzzy socks and chill back, because this video will probably be a little longer than some of my videos have been lately. So let's just talk horror, guys. Basically, the thing that I hear from a lot of horror elitists is that horror is dead. And most of the people that say horror is dead haven't liked any horror movies that have come out since, gosh, probably the 80s, actually. They stopped loving horror when the Freddys and Michaels and Jasons and those characters began to die off. Now, I feel like every single decade has their own type of horror that stood out the most. And I feel like in the last, let's see, from about the 60s to the early 2000s is where we really got our look at the final girl. And the thing about it is that horror gave us virtually two types of females in a horror movie. We had our final girls that were usually, you know, pure or more pure than the rest of the group. She's typically a girl that you can relate to, that doesn't want to be there in the first place. She is very virtuous. She has good morals. You know, she's a girl you root for. So to combat that, on the opposite side of the spectrum, our other main female character, and she will never be a main in these types of horror movies, is the more promiscuous woman. She is probably there with her boyfriend, where she's going to flash you within the first 15 minutes of the film. She's going to die very quickly, but her death will be amazing and bloody and disgusting, and you will enjoy it. So I think there's a lot of social commentary on that if you're, you know, basically if you like sex, you're gonna die, which, you know, goes for everyone in the horror genre. But I think that's kind of proven a lot with females in a horror movie, because the more promiscuous, I can't say this word, the more promiscuous females in the movies typically have the bloodiest deaths or the most entertaining death. And typically they die with their boobs out or completely naked. And as to where the final girl's going to get her butt beat really bad, but she's still going to come out looking tough, and she's going to look strong, and she's still going to look like the type of girl that you want to have sex with. And although I absolutely do love movies of the past, I don't have a particular genre of horror that I enjoy and don't enjoy. I love horror, so I love the cliches, and I love the cheesiness, and I love the art type films, and I love certain torture porn type films, and so I love The Final Girl, and I love that promiscuous girl, and I love her boobs, okay? As in Jason's remake, you know, some of them have great nipple placement. But I think for things to continue to grow and things to continue to expand, you have to break out of those norms every so often. So, like, where the 80s mostly had these killers that were, like, unstoppable and had a ton of remakes where you often ended up cheering for the killer instead of the final girl. Even if you were cheering for the final girl, you were also cheering for the killer. Okay, Ozzy, I get it. You don't agree with me. I knew it. But even if you are cheering for the final girl, you're also cheering for the killer. And the 90s took a little spin on that. We got more slashers than we did monsters. So we got more human monster than unbeatable demon, literal evil type of monsters. But with the 90s, we still kept our final girl, because no matter who she was going against, take, for example, Sidney Prescott, the iconic final girl of the 90s for me. And actually, Scream is one of the first horror movies that really just made me appreciate horror. And I know a lot of people don't want to consider it a horror, they just want to call it a slasher, and that's a whole other topic. But we still had the final girl in the 90s. And the 2000s was a great time for us to say, okay, this is the way most people expect a movie to go. They expect for someone to make it out alive. So we got rid of that. We just decided to kill them all. And we got films like Saw and Hostel and all of these movies where it was more about the violence than it was about characters and expanding their personalities. And we took the final girl and just got rid of her. If there was a final girl, she wasn't always making it to the end. She was often dying. And the bad guys were reigning supreme. We also got really more developed bad guys, though, because a lot of the monsters of, like, between the 2000s and 2010 had semi-good reasons. And I'm not trying to sympathize with murderers, but, I mean, they were bad guys that you could understand. Not all of them, because we also got a ton of people that were just, they didn't have any type of moral. So it wasn't about good versus evil. It was just, they enjoyed it, so they did it. But we moved away from our final girls. I mean, there are films in the 2000s that still had final girls and still played upon that trope, but it wasn't the main focus that I saw from the 2000s. Which brings me, like, a little while into this video, to what I want to actually discuss. Because we may have gotten rid of the final girl as a virtuous, sin-free type of person, because I can't think of the word. But from 2010 until 2020, we have given our final girl a makeover. Let me just start out by saying that I am a huge fan of folk horror and artsy type of horror. I am a huge fan of slow burns, so I don't care how long it takes us to get to the end. I will sit and watch it if the story is good. Which is probably why a lot of people don't like the more modern takes on horror, because most people just want to see shock, and they just want to see epic deaths and crazy kills and inventive traps. And guys, that's in 2010 and below. Okay, we are going a little crazier now. I would like to preface this by saying, if you haven't seen any movie that you hear me mention the name, there are going to be spoilers because I want to discuss these movies. So I will say whatever movie name it is. If you haven't seen the movie and don't want a spoiler, maybe click away. I'm a spoiler girl. I like to discuss. Okay? So basically, I would say where I first noticed this was with The Babadook. Because The Babadook took the creepy killer monster and twisted it, where, like, people that wanted that got that, but there was also all of this deep stuff underneath the surface. So with the mom, she is our final girl of the modern age of horror. She suffered a lot, which is something that I've seen repeated a lot in these movies that I'm going to talk about. These female characters are some of the realest female characters that I've seen in a while. They are not completely pure. They're not completely virtuous. They have morals, but they're also a little loose with them. Like, they're human, which is what I love about these movies that I'm discussing today. With The Babadook, it's such a clear picture of a mother dealing with her grief and her child that is a handful. He's, she's already dealing with something so painful that is also indirectly, because of this child that she has to love and care for. And it all just kind of boils to the surface, and we get this very unique picture about motherhood and grief and just pain. And first off, the actress, I forget who the actress is, but she did a wonderful job of portraying all of these things. But she's our final girl. She makes it to the end. She doesn't defeat the monster, though. That's another thing about these movies. We haven't so much killed the monster as we've contained it or joined it. And I don't know what that says about our society today, where we don't get rid of our bad guys. We just lock them in our basements. Another movie where this is very prevalent is The Witch. Now, The Witch is in my top 3 favorite horror movies ever. Okay? I love The Witch. I love every single thing about The Witch. I think that it is the most amazing movie ever, and I don't care what anyone else says. It's my favorite movie. But with The Witch, we do actually get this pure person because, you know, their family is super religious and things, and in the end, she is the last one standing. Thomasin is suppressed by the family's religion, and she is treated very differently than, say, the other children. And all of the evil going on is being blamed on her, when in fact she has absolutely nothing to do with any of it. It's all this goat that is amazing, and I mean, you can't get much cuter than Black Phillip. Except for maybe Salem. In the end, yeah, everyone ends up dying. And she didn't even have anything to do with it. She was not the cause. And yet, she is our final girl. She goes through all of this torment and accusations, and she ends up joining with the evil. She ends up living deliciously and embracing her sexuality and freedom in the end. And she's not made to look like a bad guy for doing that. She's not... When at the end Thomasin sheds her clothes and joins the other girls, it's a celebration. I don't think anyone can really view the ending of The Witch and think, oh, the bad guy won. I see it more as a commentary into embracing yourself and embracing your sexuality, embracing who you are, and just, you know, floating around naked with a bunch of girls as a Satan / devil goat watches you. A movie recently where I saw this was with Midsommar. Midsommar is another favorite of mine now, even though I've watched it twice within the last week, and I love it. So, Midsommar gives us another final girl in the body of Dani. Now, Dani is very troubled. She's dealing with a lot of emotional stuff, especially when it comes to her sister, who sends her a very dark email, and it's made very clear that she's done this a lot of times before. And Dani is a girl. Dani is someone that I can relate to as a woman, because her fear is that she's leaning too much on her boyfriend, that he's going to want to break up with her because she just has all of this emotional baggage, and she is being vulnerable with him, and she's sharing this stuff with him, and she's scared to death that he is not capable of handling that, or that he shouldn't be able to, or shouldn't have to handle that. And then her sister commits suicide and kills her parents, and she's completely broken. Now, in the meantime, her boyfriend is wanting to break up with her because of things like this. He's not happy. He She's got too much going on, and it's a messy roller coaster. But in the end, Dani is given this role where she can choose who this village's sacrifices are, and her boyfriend's on the chopping block. Well, even though most of us would see it as evil, she decides that he can be sacrificed. And as he's burning alive, she is laughing. And she's our final girl. She's the last one standing out of all of her friends, out of her boyfriend, out of everyone else there. She is the last one, and she is given the last laugh. This is also with us. In the end, it is the bad girl that triumphs. They are characters now that are final girls, can be considered villains if you are very narrow-minded. But you don't feel bad for them doing what they want. At least not in my opinion. I mean, I have been accused of being a psycho, so maybe don't take advice from me. But I do love this shift of you don't have to be pure and perfect and a virgin to survive. If anything, it's being strong when you feel weak, and it's being tough in hard situations, and being conditioned by life and all of these things that happen to you. It's going on despite all of these mental things that go on. It's just surviving. It's not about killing the monsters. It's about surviving. Yeah. So, I love our new final girls. And the thing I can say with like these movies in particular is we also didn't have females that were killed off just for being sexual. We kind of got rid of that character, and I like that, because on the other side, in the male characters, we've also pretty much gotten rid of the jock that has no brains, and you know, the dorky guy that just has a crush on the main girl but will never get with her, and things like that. We've taken our brutality in horror and given it empathy, which is something that I feel modern horror does the best out of any other type of horror to come before it. We have gotten a lot more empathy and more feeling in newer horror. And I really enjoy seeing that, because we're not just rooting for people to die in these modern takes. If anything, even the characters that you don't like so much, you still aren't just waiting for their deaths. Probably the only movie that I can think of where I was kind of rooting for someone to die was in Midsommar with one of the friends, because he was just a jerk, but he was a funny jerk. So I was kind of just waiting for him to die. And the boyfriend is a dickhead. But that's not always the case with these movies. We get characters that we don't want to see die that can die. And sometimes characters don't even die in these movies. And it's still scary. I mean, you don't have to have death to be horror. It's definitely something that is horrifying and should be in horror, but you don't always have to have death for horror. And you don't have to have really huge kill counts and really intricate death traps. And I don't see why not having a death or not having these very large scale type of killings means that a movie isn't horror, because it is. I don't think there was anyone in the Babadook that died other than, you know, the husband before. So, and the poor dog. Poor doggy. That is probably my biggest hatred for newer horror, is we just kill animals all the time, and it really hurts. Okay? So they don't deserve it. Out of anything, animals should be the final girl. They are the purest and most precious of anything to exist in this entire world, and people are not. So if you gave me a movie where every person in the movie died, but the animal lived, I'd be okay with that. And if that movie exists, please tell me. I guess that's all I've got for you guys today. Yeah. So, make sure that you are subscribed to my channel. Make sure that you are following me on all social medias, and just know that my books are in the description box down below. I hope that you decide to buy one or two or all of them. And I will see you guys next week. Kisses, my darlings.